How's it going, trainers, and welcome to another Pokemon Go PvP video. Today we're going to be covering my community's custom cup, the Cascade Cup. As you can see, the Cascade Cup consists of water, ice, psychic, and fairy type Pokemon, and the only species that aren't permitted are mythicals and legendaries such as Defense Deoxys, Cresselia, Mew, and so on. So with all that being said and done, we're going to go ahead and look at a little bit of a meta simplified graphic that I created to help break it down a little bit more easily. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Right away, when you look at this meta, you can see a couple familiar faces from Cups past. Those familiar faces especially being Azumarill and Medicham. And much like any meta that they are in, they have a very important role. I would say Azumarill actually being the most important. Even though, as you can see, there is a category of fairies on its own, you could almost say that Azumarill is, does all the things they do, plus some. As you can see, the fairies are good against the Mud Boys in the center, and Medicham at the top middle right there. But if you look at Azumarill, it's good against the fairies, good against the Mud Boys as well, and good against Medicham. So it gives you additional great coverage. So can't recommend that one enough. If you can't afford to do Azumarill, my next best recommendation would be Wigglytuff. But you gotta note that Charm as the fast move, which is gonna be the preferred method, is gonna make it so you can't get to your charge moves very fast, unlike Azumarill's Bubble. Azumarill truly is just the perfect fairy type. Moving on, Medicham, as always, is important. It's good against the Mud Boys, and it's relatively good against the Razor Leafers, mostly Abomasnow, because of its ice typing. You're going to want to watch out, as they all have Razor Leaf. Razor Leaf is going to be causing massive damage to you, so you're going to want to Power Up Punch the living crap out of these Razor Leaf users, but they do have winning matchups with Medicham against them. The Razor Leafers themselves are, of course, good against Azumarill. They are good against the Mud Boys, really good against the Mud Boys, and that's pretty much their role. If you look at the fairies, again, they're good against the Mud Boys and good against Medicham. Then on the bottom left, you can see the electric types. The electric types, of course, are good against Azumarill and the standard fairies, and they're actually pretty good against Medicham. Specifically, Lantern's bulkiness allows it to stay alive and do well against it, and Alolan Raichu's spammy, fast, hard-hitting attacks really actually put a number on Medicham, so they are also good counters to Medicham in this meta. Lastly, we have the Confusion users, and they are good against the Razor Leaf users and Medicham. And yeah, let's go a little deeper into each. Starting with Azumarill, the anti-fairy tank. Now, it is a fairy type, and as we previously discussed, it basically does everything that a fairy does, plus some. So you get positive matchups against opposing fairies, as long as shields are at least neutral, and you pretty much wall Medicham. You put up a really good fight against the Mud Boys, and you can even have shield advantage after the Mud Boys. So your main weaknesses are going to be Grass and Electric, so watch out for those Razor Leaf users, and watch out for Lantern and Alolan Raichu. Next up, let's look a little deeper into Medicham. Medicham has a positive matchup against the Mud Boys, and remember that a shieldless Medicham is going to be a dead Medicham, so make sure you still shield against something like a Swampert, who has that hard-hitting Hydro Cannon, Quagsire's hard-hitting Stone Edge, Wishcash can spam Mud Shots like you wouldn't believe. At full health, Medicham can handle the Razor Leaf users, but otherwise you will get beaten strictly because of Razor Leaf's massive damage output, so always be mindful of Razor Leaf's insane fast move damage output. Despite how good Medicham is, it will lose to something like that because you're not going to be able to use shields against fast attacks. Medicham's key weaknesses are Flying, Fairy, and Ghost, so watch out for Azumarill's Play Rough and fairies with Charm and any type of ghosts that you could see in the meta. Next up, let's go ahead and look at the Razor Leaf users. Now there are, I think, like 3 or 4 that you could use in this meta, but truly there are only 2 that mean anything, that being Abomasnow and Ludicolo. The Razor Leaf users, these 2 specifically, decimate Azumarill. It really is true. Thanks to their subtypings, Ludicolo's being water typing and Abomasnow's being ice type, you can pretty much resist everything Azumarill has. They're very efficient against the Mud Boys. Razor Leaf, you don't even have to do any charge moves, you just spam that Razor Leaf and farm up some energy. But be careful in the case of Abomasnow. Quagsire Stone Edge is a rock type move, and it is super effective against Abomasnow's ice sub-typing. Quagsire's Sludge Bomb is also a bit of an issue for the grass typing of these two, so just watch out. Acid Spray is a thing too. Acid Spray will lower your defense, and it ain't good. Moving on, the Mud Boys. The Mud Boys pretty much completely wall the two main electric type users in this meta, being Lantern and Alolan Raichu. Extremely positive matchups against the Confusion users, but you do need to be careful of something like Gallade. Gallade has Leaf Blade, and with Confusion it has pretty fast access to Leaf Blade. You can spam it pretty fast and pretty frequently, so that could be a real threat. So don't necessarily think that the Mud Boys handle all the Confusion users, because Gallade is kind of like that little trickster Confusion user. The key differences between these three Mud Boys, I would say that Swampert is just really fast, good damage, but a little bit glassy. You could fire off those Hydro Cannons like you wouldn't believe, but you're gonna get hit by everything pretty hard. Quagsire's versatile. Quagsire's ability to have a Stone Edge, Acid Spray, Sludge Bomb, Earthquake, you never know what the two is going to be, and it allows for a bunch of different really good coverages, not to mention his resistances as well, like the other Mud Boys. Wishcash's biggest plus to me is that it could fire off Mudshot so fast, so you get that ground damage faster than you could get from anybody else, and you could spam it. It's good to fake out with Blizzard, and Blizzard is of course good against a lot of things, so it's really fun to use and farm up to that Blizzard. And they think they got a Blizzard coming, but you fire a Mud Shot, they shield it, you fire another Mud Shot, and then you're either going to waste both shields, or you're going to get a shield and do good damage against them. So Wishcash is another good option amongst Swampert and Quagsire. Yes, there are other Mud Boys in consideration, something like, let's see, Gastrodon, Marshtomp, but these three have always and will remain to be the kings of the Mud Boys. Moving on, let's take a look at the electric users. Now, I've only really highlighted two, because these are the two that really matter. We got Alolan Raichu and Lantern. They have positive matchups against all fairy types, including Azumarill, and they do well against Medicham, so having a Pokemon that's good against both Azumarill and Medicham can be really beneficiary to you. So, as I've noted before, Alolan Raichu is a little bit glassy, but its ability to spam very powerful electric type attacks and get to Wild Charge, like, it's really hard to count with Wild Charge. You never know when it's coming half the time, so you can do some really good damage. Lantern is tanky. In this meta, I would personally prefer Charge Beam as the fast move instead of Water Gun, and that is because Charge Beam does allow you to build up to the charge moves faster, and in this meta you kind of need that electric damage more from this type of mon. So having Charge Beam as your fast move is my preference. They are good utility mons. Remember that Lantern also has access to Hydro Pump, so that gives you something against the Mud Boys at least, whereas Alolan Raichu is only going to be running 3 electric attacks, so if you run into a Mud Boy with Alolan Raichu, then you're toast. But let's go ahead and move on to the next typing, which I believe is the Fairy types. The Fairy types we're going to count without Azumarill, because I really do feel that Azumarill deserves its own little subtyping-ish. So we got Togekiss, Clefable, Gardevoir, and Wigglytuff. They specialize in doing very large amounts of damage with their Charm Fast move against Medicham and the Mud Boys. And remember that Charm Fast move is super effective damage to Medicham, so you will be melting that sucker like butter with all 4 of these. Each of them have their own kind of unique weaknesses. If you look at Togekiss, it's sub-flying types, so you're going to have to watch out for ice types, so that's a problem, or electric types. Gardevoir is also a psychic type, so you're going to have to watch out for ghost or dark, stuff like that. Whereas Wigglytuff and Clefable are both normal fairies. They might just be fairies now, but and they both have relatively good access to good moves. So Wigglytuff has access to like Ice Beam, Play Rough. Clefable has access to Meteor Mash, Play Rough, just good coverage moves. So Clefable with that Meteor Mash could do great damage to opposing fairy types. Wigglytuff's Ice Beam moves give it good access to hit the Razor Leaf users for something. But again, something notable about these fairy type users is their Charm Fast move does so much damage with such little energy gain that you're really only going to get to maybe one charge move in your lifespan. So use it wisely, try to keep it for when there's no shields with your opponent, and you can use these very, very well if you plan it out right. Next up, we have the Confusion users. The Confusion users deal high amounts of damage thanks to their fast move Confusion, of course, and it allows them to deal fantastic damage to Medicham and the Razor Leaf users. Notably, Bronzong's Steel typing gives it a really, really good resistance against Grass type Pokemon. Gallade, as we've previously discussed, has access to Leaf Blade, so that's great against the Mud Boys. And Hypno, man, he's a jack of all trades. He has Shadow Ball, Legacy charge move, Psyshock, Legacy charge move. He has Fire Punch, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, like the list goes on. He has so many great moves, and as you can see, he could be used in any kind of way that you need him. So he's a good utility 6 Pokemon in your team of 6 for what you feel you're lacking and need additional coverage for. So these 3 are great Confusion users. Of course, there are plenty of other Confusion users in this meta, such as something like a Slowbro, but yeah, these are the 3 we're going to be mostly focusing on. So next up, we're going to go ahead and look at a best out of 3 that I recorded, so you get a kind of a look-see at what I'm testing a little bit, and a handle on what the meta might look like. So let's go ahead and take a look at that.